Color can be used to make you feel hungry. Color can be used to make you calm down and be more focused. To me, color is life. And I've always had this goal to paint life. I don't know if I'm ever gonna attain that, but I'm gonna do the best I can to get as close as I can. I am trying to create a new lens in which young African immigrants can be seen. Back in the 1400s to 1600s, things were created to make Africans seem inferior. Tell stories of young African immigrants in the diaspora in a very honest and authentic way. Stories that also exhibit beauty, purity, vibrancy. Stories that elevate those communities instead of diminish them.
The instant that I met Papay, it was just like the instant connection. It's like we just talked, like we've been friends for a long time. I was just mesmerized by his work and how much of passion and dedication he puts into it. When he proposed this project, I was like, yeah, this is the start of something great.
And it's the first time I've ever collaborated with a designer. Chessie's commitment to reimagining the African diaspora. He has this mission to create designs that elevate the minds of the young people of the African diaspora. And I really admire him for that.
It's a long journey, just thinking of where Papay came from or where I came from and how artists that is gonna come behind us. It's like paving the way from them. It doesn't depend the race or religion, but the fact that they just appreciate the beauty of how this art was created, that should motivate them that whatever they are doing, as long as they're giving their all, let me tell you, you will shine.
I think that fashion and fashion design is a very powerful instrument in making people feel important, making people feel realized. And I think that everyone needs to feel valuable to provide their best. It's a Vlisco print, and it's not really African. It's Dutch, but a while ago, during the transatlantic slavery, the fabric was introduced to Africa. And over time, it became a part of our culture because the aesthetics were already present in what we had going on, traditionally speaking. So now whenever you see textiles like these, you immediately think of Africa. So I thought that using a Vlisco print would be a good representation of where I am right now. I am African, and I'm here in America. I have to, in a way, walk across those lines all day, every day. I have to maintain my Africanness, but at the same time, I have to maintain my Western influence because there's no way I can be just an African. As soon as we took this fabric and compared it with the emergency blanket, it just made sense. It made it look like those two things belonged together. There was just an instant connection, and I felt that that was the right fit.
Pretty much the whole thing, the preliminary sketch, is just a 10% of what the outcome is going to be. So during the process, there's a lot of changing, there's a lot of adding, there's a lot of detail in the construction that you really cannot see in the sketch.
Since I'm also one of the figures in the paintings, I couldn't really be the photographer of the reference photo. So I hired a really good friend of mine, Johnny Kerr, to photograph.
When Papay first approached me about this project, my answer was yes before he finished the sentence. The only hesitant thought in my mind was, am I good enough to do this? Am I good enough to be on this team? And very quickly, I just had to trust in the ask and say, if he thinks so, then we'll figure it out. It wasn't my place to visually direct this in my style. That nothing of this project looks like it comes from Johnny Kerr. But the tools that I have were what I was trying to rely on, and my conversations with Papay, and thankfully I know his work fairly well after having photographed almost everything he's painted for the last year, allowed me to insert myself where I was needed and keep myself out of it where I wasn't needed.
I knew who I was working with, and I knew that everyone that I was working with was equally as talented in their own way. So I had to allow people to be the creative self, because I knew it was going to benefit the project overall.
And even though this project wasn't about bringing my vision forward, he still invited a little bit of that anyways. I was able to draw on some of the photographers like Irving Penn and Richard Avedon. Those are the people that I look to when I think about portraits. And when I've done portraits in the past, those were the inspirations that I had. The combining of these different pieces between me and Papay and Chessie, and even the model's own body, the way that she is able to hold or not hold poses, everybody had a kind of finger in the pot here.
I definitely think about my posing, but also it depends on the photographer, of course, because there's different things they might want you to do. So I usually try to imagine, okay, my angles. But every time you go to a shoot, it's always something different. So you can't always expect the same thing. If you're comfortable with the photographer, you're relaxed and you could be yourself. You can be more creative.
When the canvas first entered my studio, just the thought of it was honestly very, very intimidating. I had never painted on a size this large before. It's 5 times the paintings I've done previously. It was like a journey that I was excited to go on, but at the same time very intimidated by. But it was, I don't know, I think it was good intimidation, because I believe that if things are not intimidating sometimes, then why are you doing them for, right? The challenges that this size of a painting brings in a space this small. I had to draw every painstaking detail, and that was very painful. That was very, very painful, because I had to get in positions that I've never basically used before in creating a painting. But it started to become even more exciting when I could see the picture form. That's when I had energy that I didn't even know I had, because I had to see it form. It's like beyond the bruises, beyond the droopy eyes, and beyond all of that is gold. And it takes pain, and it takes effort, and it takes hard work, and it takes a constant back and forth. But it's worth it. Surface level, the painting is of 2 people, 1 male, 1 female, and they are placed in this pool of a background. I wanted to create a space where space was prominent, but also that very prominent space was out of focus. To me, space has always been infinite, ever-changing. There's no way I can look back right now, especially like the place I lived in when I was in a refugee camp. There's no way I can go back and say, this was my home, this is where I grew up. That doesn't exist anymore. It's just memories now. So space to me has been infinite, has been ever-changing every decade of my life. And I mean, I was inspired by a lot of the greats too, like Malik Sidibé. I went through his pictures a lot before I started the painting, because I wanted to, in a way, capture the same energy, the same sense of humility that he included in his photography. And to showcase Tessa's attributes, I reflected back on ancient Egyptian art, because when they did their portraits, they wanted to show the best parts of the human body. So I tried mimicking that vocabulary. There's a negative connotation or a specific message that comes with using the emergency blanket. You know, it just directs to refugeeism, right? It just, oh, that's a refugee conversation happening there. I didn't want it to be that. I want it to be subtle, where you think it's actually something else, but when you look deeper and maybe read into it deeper, you start to understand, okay, this is not really what I thought it was. Because when I walk down the street now, I mean, you can't tell I was once a refugee. It's nearly impossible. So I wanted to attack it in that manner. Because I was a refugee doesn't make me less than, doesn't mean I can't do the same thing that you can do. Perhaps I may even do that thing better than you, because I have many different influences working at the same time. That's a privilege. I see a coin from multiple sides all at once, because I've lived multiple lives. So I wanted to, in a way, incorporate that into the design of this whole attire, but doing it in a very subtle way, in a way that screams regal, that screams dynasty, that screams royal, but also militant at the same time. I wanted to create multiple perspectives. I wanted to, in a way, just celebrate who we are, how we are, and where we are to the fullest. I feel like I've already lived the worst of my life. This is easy. This is fun play. Surround yourself with people who are going somewhere. Find some mentorship. You'll be okay. You'll be perfectly okay. This is just the start. There's so much you can do. Keep going. And never, never let your heritage go. Never, never forget about where you came from.
This thing that Papay is doing, I don't know if I have the words to describe it, but he is at once modernizing, because there are people that are alive and here right now, but he is also reaching into their very specific cultural traditions, the land that they came from, and the way that that land informed the designs on the fabrics that they wear, the way that that land might inform the feel of the fabric on their skin. And he's bringing those things into modern. He's not trying to present what this person might have looked like in the culture they came from. He's showing them now, today, with enough of the context of where they came from that we are forced to reckon with a new experience.
It's always important to know who you are and to accept who you are.
Because we don't see it often. You only hear the white people and their successes. You never really hear about, hey, this is this African who came here as a refugee. We have this conversation where Papay and I always laugh. There was a post, it was like, what do you bring to the table? And she's like, I'm the table. I feel like Africa is the table. We are the table. We bring a lot. I think we just need to put our foot down and be like, hey, we control this. We rule this. We're definitely being taken advantage for. So that's why it's great to see like an African just succeeding and putting their foot down and believing in something and just doing great.
And I found myself, blessed to be part of something meaningful, part of something artistic, part of something that brings joy with everybody that's involved in it.
When I was conceptualizing this painting, I wanted to create this grandiose painting, creating something that was bold and something that was in your face without presenting the figures like they were aiming to be anything, aiming to impress anyone, aiming to be seen as something different. I presented them as they are.